So I hope you're having a good Friday. I hope everyone is okay. And thank you for joining to this session on prototyping. For those who were last week in the last session, I hope it's everyone. We talked about wireframing, why it's important, why it's the first step in product design. Today we're going to talk about prototyping. That is basically taking these wireframes and pushing them into actual production before we release a product. And it's very important, the prototyping, because the wireframing is kind of to build a structure, and then from there you can see it more clear. Let's say people can actually see how the product is going to look like, and you can even make a few functions, like for example the user flow and a few clicks, pop-ups, things like this, so it will look more interesting and very close to what the actual product is, without using any code, just using the tools that we have for UI design. In this case, we're going to work with Figma, which is one of the most popular ones. First of all, because it's free. It has a paid version, but it's basically more like for team working. But if you're a student and you want to be a proficient into a design tool for UI, Figma is usually the way to go because it's free, it's easy, it's very intuitive, and of course there are a lot of knowledge out there, from YouTube tutorials to do specific things like animations, for example, to courses, and well, this opportunity with me to learn a little bit of the basics of what you can do with this tool and why it's important in prototyping. First of all, I want to start by talking a little bit about me for those who doesn't know me very well, or it's the first time that you are with me. I do this because also, like you, I like to take webinars, and one of the things I do, or take online workshops. So one of the things I want to do is to know who is this guy and why should I listen to him. So about me, I'm a UX UI designer for a startup in Israel called Phloc. That is basically a marketplace for photographic experiences, from workshops to tours, from organizing talks to photographers and all this. I started as a graphic designer. I have a bachelor in graphic design, and then I took a master degree in visual communications. I've been a graphic designer for almost a little bit more than 10 years, and UX UI designer specifically, I started a little bit more or less 2 years ago. Okay, and also I shared here my social media in case you want to contact me, come with questions. I'm very open to have a chat whenever you need. I don't always have the time during all the day, but when I can, I'm very happy to reply. So this is my Facebook page, my LinkedIn profile, and my GitHub profile also, because I have a few things, projects I do in there. Okay, now let's get into the actual thing in Figma. So first of all, this is what we did the last session, is the wireframing. As I said before, wireframing is basically the structure using basic shapes and text. In this case, I show you two kinds of simulated text you have. I show the lorem ipsum, and I show that you can also use these shapes to simulate not text, but the blocks of text where this is going to be displayed in the product, okay? I made another copy of this frame that I called prototype, because in here is where we're going to work today. I'm also going to show you not only Figma, but a few other tools that you can use to help yourself for prototyping. For example, Figma has the capability of installing certain plugins. A plugin is basically a tool that is not made by the people from Figma, is made by someone else and has the capability of being installed in Figma and work with it. So there are a bunch of plugins out there. Some you pay for them, but most of them are very simple plugins that are for free. One of those plugins, for example, I don't use it that much, but it's a plugin for using the simulated text that we have here, for example. In this case, what I did is I went to a generator of lorem ipsum, but there's a plugin also, or a few, that generate this. You just write there how many paragraphs you want, and the plugin does the rest for you. I'm going to show you also a thing that I use for keeping color palettes that I use very oftenly. For example, for the company I work for, and this is very useful when you are starting to create a design system. We're going to talk a little bit, not into deep detail, but we're going to talk a little bit about what's the design system and why you should start building it right away when you are prototyping to document basically what you are doing. And later you will create a bigger document of what a design system is. Okay, so let's start. We had this, remember we talked about making a landing page. We took a screen for a laptop, specifically a MacBook, from what Figma already has in here. For example, it has desktop in here and has a MacBook, MacBook Pro, iMac, and a few other things, has a tablet, has the phones, has a smartwatch, has a few things, few templates already, few sizes. We are working now basically on web design. So this is the screen we have already. It's a preset that Figma has. I don't did anything really to this menu bar because I think it's not that it's not important, but there's really not much that you can do to it besides certain rules of let's say organizing or the composition of how to display the information in there, and it's kind of technical in a way, so I will skip this part and go into some more interesting stuff, like for example how to use the plugins for this gallery, how to do a few animations and things like this. So let's start. We were talking that we had this landing page for a product that we call the awesome jacket. Okay, so let's say I have here my gallery and I want to put some pictures in here to show how it will actually look like. I have a group in here where I put all my shapes to do the image gallery. This with the cross, I explained last time that these are image placeholders. This cross in the shape is kind of standard for an image placeholder, but for prototyping, you kind of will need to get rid of them. Now, let's say I want to, instead of this shape, I want to put an actual picture. One option that I have is, as you can see in here, Figma is telling me this shape is 300 by 300 pixels. So if you are the graphic designer of the place you are working, it's very common that in small companies, for example, the startup I work for is not very big. So I do a lot of graphic design also, and it's very common that I prepare also the pictures that are going to be used for the product, the final product. So there are two options in here, basically. You can take an actual picture, go to Photoshop, let's say, and prepare the image and cut it and release it for web resolution in 300 by 300. That's the long road. And we have the short one, where we are going to use a plugin. So basically, Figma has here in this menu, we talk a little bit about the tools that we have, but in here has the plugins. For example, these are the ones I have. I have this one that is called Anima. It's basically for making animations on Figma. Figma by itself can make some animations, a lot of them actually. The difference with Anima is that Anima actually make or creates the code for those animations. This means I can make an animation of a pop-up, or let's say if I want to throw some shade into the button when the user is hovering through it or over it, I can make that animation with Anima, and then as a result, I will get the code that I can share with my developers, so they don't have to guess what I'm doing in there. They will just paste the code that I'm generating already, and it's very useful if you understand a little bit of code, mostly CSS, and it will make the life of the developers way easier. The other one that I have is MapMaker. MapMaker, what it does, basically creates maps from a bunch of sources. For example, street maps, that is open source. You don't need to pay for it. You don't need to do anything. You just need to have the API key. Or also you can use a Google Maps. That Google Maps, you don't have to pay for it until certain limit. They have a paid version also. And with that, it's not very expensive. I don't remember exactly how much. But with that, I can just draw a shape, let's say, and say I want a map in there. Let's try. I haven't used it for a while, but I don't remember how what exactly it is, how I used it. But for example, let's say I will put my home, and it will show me the zoom level and few things that I can customize. For example, in here I can also paste information, but it's mostly code in things like CSS or JSON that are more like for developers. And I can show, for example, the marker of exactly the place I want to show. I have the different options that it has: satellite, terrain, roadmap, and I will make the map, and I can play with this map. As you see, it's generated automatically. And let's say I don't want it this way. I want to be 300 by 300. This is my space in here. And I will have my map. In this case, for this landing page, it's not useful, but I just want to show some of the things you can do with plugins that are a very useful tool for prototyping. Another plugin I have in here, for example, is this one, Paste to Fill. And I'm going to explain what is this, because this will make your life very easy when you have already in mind what kind of pictures you are going to use. Maybe you already have them. And if not, you can use pictures from other sites, like let's say these places that have stock images. And this is what we're going to use. So how it works. I already have a picture in here ready for our awesome jacket. I have the picture of this guy with this awesome jacket. And all I have to do is I do right click, copy image. Sorry, my computer is in Spanish, but I'm going to explain what's going on. So I copy the image in here. I go back to my shape. I go to my plugin. I select this one, Paste to Fill. And it tells me I just need to do Command or Control V. And what it does, it didn't work this time. Let me see why. Okay, let's try again. Copy image, this, plugins, Paste to Fill, and there it is. What I did was only copying the image that is online. It needs to be online. This is the first requirement, let's say. It's not an image in my computer. If I want to take an image in my computer, then there is a different process for this. I can, let's say, let's take this one. I can just drag and drop and then manipulate it. But as you see, it didn't fit exactly in my square. It's the original size. This is the size that it's telling me it has. But with the plugin that I used, I took an image that was online and just pasted it in here. And also I can move it. What it means, I can center it in here. I won't move it because I think it's pretty well because it's in the center, the guy in the picture. What the plugin does is automatically takes the center. So if you are willing to take something else, you will have to manipulate it a little. But as you see here in my field, for example, this shape, the feel of it, the feeling is a color, while the feeling of this square is a picture. So it works this way. And because it's a picture, I can manipulate it also in a few ways. For example, the same as the color, I can make it with some transparency. Or I can, for example, just break the link and put something else. So it works the same way. It works this image as if I'm picking a color field. This is what the plugin does. And I think it's pretty awesome and will make your life pretty easy when working with this. I didn't have to take this image and download and then took it to Photoshop and then code it in 300 by 300 and center it. I just use the plugin to copy and paste. So if you want to take note again of this, the name of the plugin is Paste to Fill. There are other plugins that do similar things. They work in a similar way, or there are others that, for example, are linked to already a specific company or stock image, let's say, site, a stock image website, and they take the pictures from that site and they let you choose from the collection they have. And the catch in here is that some are free, and if you want to have even more or more specific things, then you'll have to pay. But in here, I can take a picture from wherever. I took this from Pixabay, that is an image stock that is free. But if you have a paid one, or even from Google Images, you can do the same with the paste and fill. Okay, another thing that I want to show is that Figma has this play button here. And what it does is show how the product is going to see. It opens in a new tab. So far, we only put the image, but we're going to see how our website looks. Oh, this is the other one. It keeps all the pages. This is our wireframe, and we evolve to this. Okay, let's take again this. And for example, I can add a stroke to this, or I can take it off, or I can put certain textures, for example, in this image. There are a few things I can do. Well, since this is my image gallery, I want to keep it clean. Another thing that I want to show, another tool, is mostly, I'm going to show it to you. This is mostly colors, and it's created by the people from InVision. Basically, it's color palettes, a color palette generator. One of the things you can do is, for example, you can check the colors of an image. Let's say, I don't know which images I have here. I have the flyer for this course. So I can take a picture and it will tell me the colors that this design has and give me the code. Let's say I want this purple. I will just copy, and my menu bar, I will turn it into that. I just copy paste, and there it is. And the cool thing about this is that you can save your personal ones. Let's check the ones that I have saved. These are colors that I use. For example, these are the ones that I use for the company I work for. These are the ones when I do websites. For example, this is alerts, this is accept messages, this is the warning messages, things like this. and this is for a personal project I have. So you can save your color palettes. And in here, let's say this purple is my brand color, is the brand institutional color and the main color for my digital product. So what I can do is come here and save it. Okay, it gives me the colors I already have in my document, but there's a way in which I can save this color and say this purple is my primary. And it says here create style. And now every time I want to use this purple, I don't need to go back to here, copy the code, and then go back to Figma. What I can do is just go in here and it will show already the colors that I'm using. Here is my purple, for example. Why is this important? Because let's start creating another frame in here. This will be your guide for a design system. And let's talk a little bit about what is that. Oh, little misspell. So along with your user interface design, you need to hand the design system. What is this? It's a document that contains all the rules and the basics of your design. By this, I mean it needs to include all the colors you're using with the clear code of the color, with which one is the main one, which is secondary, as I show you in here, which one, again, I'm going to here, which one is for warnings, which one is for alerts or denials, which one is for successful tasks, and things like this. Which one is, for example, your basic gray? I use that a lot. I have a very specific gray that I use for most of my projects, if not all of them. And I always include this gray in the design system. Now, the design system is kind of a long document in a way, because it needs certain explanations why you are doing the things the way you are doing it. But what I recommend always is that you start building this guide in Figma along with your prototyping. So let's say this purple in here, I want to say, okay, this is my primary color, and I'm going to put a shape in here. And I will start by saying which are my colors in my design system. Let's put this a little bit smaller. The things that are included in the design system and that you need to have in this guide is the colors, the kind of font you are using. For example, in here, I'm using Roboto, that is also in Google Fonts. It's pretty standard, actually. A lot of apps and websites have this. Even, for example, many WordPress themes had it as default. So, for example, I need to say in here which font I'm using, which is the size of my headlines. For example, I'm here using Roboto Black 18, and this has to be a system. What this means, I have this as a landing page, but if I'm going to design also the full website, I need to follow these rules. I cannot put this headline as 18 and then the next one as 20 and then the next one as 16, and I cannot do that. It's a bad practice. That's why it's important to have this guide, and I cannot choose a different purple, or let's say I would say, okay, this purple looks more or less like this, so I think it's this one. I cannot do that. I have to use my design system and I have to use this color here. Why? Because this is a document that all your team will use, not only you. Or the designers, also the developers. For example, this purple has a specific code for when developing. So you will need to tell this purple has this X code. This is how you build it in RGB. This is how you build it in hex, or this is the, I don't know, the specific shade of purple that I use, and 100%. And let's say I use this as a transparency also in 50%. So I need to show how it looks, my primary, but to a 50%. And I need to show clearly what is what I'm doing. I need to have this guide, and it will be a great help for when building my design system. This is my primary. It's the same purple, but in 50% opacity. Okay. If I'm going too fast, you can stop me. We don't have like all day for this, and it's a kind of a complex subject. So if you think I'm going too fast, or you want me to stop into something that you think is not very clear, you can stop me, or keep your questions for the end, and we will take some time to answer them. Okay, so far I showed you already these tools about the color palette and the plugins. Also, I'm telling you about how to start building your design system. It has to contain the colors, it has to contain the fonts and the sizes, it has to contain the margins. Many designers think it's not important in here because I did it kind of freely. I didn't keep so much the margins between this and this. But when I do actual work, I really have, let's say, I want a space between here and here that be 20 pixels. This means from here to here, also I will have 20 pixels. And from here, the picture through these shapes, also 20 pixels. So I need to put here, all my margins are 20 pixels. And this is a system that I will use every time. Okay, so let's keep this a little bit aside, and I want to show you, this is a project I worked for a startup in Colombia. It was kind of a freelance project I did. As you can see here, I built my guide in here. I put my colors, the colors that I was using. This is the same palette that I showed you before that I have already saved in Mostly. I have my warning, my danger, and my success colors for alerts. I have my light gray, and this is the gray I usually use. And this orange is the brand, the color of the brand, as well as this blue. So these are the colors of my system. These were the fonts that I was using. And you can see here, I was using regular, light, and bold. This is my H1, which means headline 1 is the biggest one, headline 2, headline 3, and my paragraph. This was the minimum size of my fonts. And a few icons I used. There are a few libraries out there for icons. I specifically use Font Awesome. Let's check into that. Font Awesome. I have been, yeah, here. Font Awesome is basically a collection of icons. Many of them are free. Some are for paying. I have the free one already, and in very, very rare occasions I use the paid ones. But for example, let's say I want an icon of, I don't know, let's say something very general. When you put user in there, it will show you all the ones that you have. The ones that are in dark are for free. The ones that are light are paid ones. To use them, you need to download them from the page. You can download by one, or you can download the whole package. I already have the whole package, so let's use it right away. Let's say I want menu. Let's see what they have here. Here, this is the very common icon for the menu. Okay, so I'm going to go into my icons I already have, and I'm going to show you how to use it when you already download the icons. Just let me look for it in my computer. Here I have. Okay, let's go back to Figma. And this is the icons I have. There are SVG files. That means there are vectors and I can edit them. So let's say I want these bars for my landing page. Again, I just drag and drop and it will appear here. And from here, I can also control, for example, the size of it. I want the height to be 100 pixels. Okay, maybe too much. Let's say 20 pixels looks more like it. I want to display it in here. And because these are vectors, I can manipulate also the colors. Now it's white, and here it is in my website. I can use all the collection that I have. There have very funny things like this candy cane or this cannabis leaf. And they have some things that are more useful, more common, let's say. Like, for example, these arrows for going back and forth are useful. They have many types of arrows. They have also, for example, if you want to put social media or things like this, they have a collection that is called brands. Let's say I want to put here a link to the Facebook of my website. So again, I drag and drop. I want to put this 20 pixels. Let's put it here in my menu bar, and again I will change the color, and here it is. And I can keep adding icons in here in my menu bar just by drag and dropping. So this is another tool I wanted to show. It's fun, awesome. There are other libraries out there and many work the same. They will give you a few for free, and then if you want extended collections, then you will need to pay. And depending on how much you want is the amount you pay. But the good thing is that the basic stuff is out there for free. Now, again, to this project I work for, one of the things with prototyping is that you can build flows. I will zoom out, and then you can see these blue lines means they are connected. This board was a landing page, is connected through a call to action, and the call to action has a small animation outside. And then, but still the call to action is connected to these other pages, that is the registration pages. I'm going to show this, and in the end, you get to this dashboard. That was the whole idea of the flow. In here, you can see the flow very easily. So in here, I also added, for example, a few animations I want to show in a while that we're going to use for this. Okay, so how this works, let's see first these animations. Let's say this company is basically so every small business can have a POS terminal, so you can, the clients can pay with a card. So after the landing page, you get to one of these options, that is that you can get your physical POS or you can get a QR code to pay. But to get this, you need to create an account. So let's say I'm a new user. This will ask me to make my account or start my session. And as you can see, this interaction looks like I'm actually on the website, but this is built on Figma. This is if I'm doing my sign in. And in here, it shows this pop-up. And this is my final screen, the dashboard. So in here, what I did is through the flow and through these animations with the pop-ups, I built the whole interaction. It's not only the UI, but also what is going to happen is the user experience, what the user is experiences along the way, from the website to creating the account to going to this online tool that is the dashboard, along with the process of creating their account and along with the process of signing in and selecting a specific product they want. So all this is through prototyping. Prototyping is not only showing the screen, like what we are doing now, it's also creating the whole experience. This is why user interface and user experience are so binded together, because they cannot exist one without the other. And this is why you need to be very immersed into both of them, because many designers want to do beautiful products that look awesome and are beautiful pieces of design, are art pieces basically, but sometimes the user experience is not that good. For example, if we go to Dribble, that is very popular, you will see pieces that are beautiful. But what I see with them is that not all of them are functional. Not all of them have a very good user experience. Some of them, or most of them, had a lot of problems that if you are experiencing this, you will see immediately that it's a beautiful design, but it's simply not doable. And when someone is let's say, people who is hiring designers, they are not only looking for beautiful products, they are also looking for something that is useful and is doable and is user friendly. Let's say that it's something that the users will actually take and use, not only based on the looks. Okay, so another thing I wanted to show, we talked before that these shapes, I can manipulate them in many ways, not only the position of them. Here is the position in X and the position in Y. I can manipulate this and it will change the position. I can change the size of it individually or bind them together. And have the angle or the border radius. And I show you that it can be done as an overall. Let's put it in 10 so it will look different. I change the border radius in here. Or I can also do it, let's put it back, or I can do it individually. Again, this is the four corners of my shape, like as a clock. This one is this one, this one is this one, and it works like this. This. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's say I want to put here like this, and I like to use this example because this makes this very clear. You can see my button, my call to action has a different shape. Now, this looks very nice. I think it's a pretty cool shape. Personally, in my own website, my portfolio, I have a few buttons like this because I think it looks pretty nice. But this is a nightmare to code for developers because it's not a regular shape. But Figma has something very interesting here, and is this tab called Inspect. Has this one called Design, is the one that we are looking now, where I have this, where I can change my shape, has the constraints. We talked a little bit about this in the past session, and has the colors, the stroke effects like shadows, for example. I added a drop shadow in here. Has the prototype that we're going to talk about this a little bit further because this is pretty interesting also, but has the inspect. What is this? Basically what this is giving me is CSS, and there are other codes I can use, but CSS is basically for websites, which is what we're building, and it's telling me the characteristics of this button. The box shadow I just created, this drop shadow that I had in here, is telling me also the color that I have. And remember the border radius I changed, then it shows in here. So the developers, I just need to give them this along with my design, and then they won't suffer trying to build this shape, irregular shape of my button. I think this is very useful. And because we're talking a little bit about CSS, I really recommend you to learn a little bit about of code. I'm not telling you to become developers yourself. That's a whole other world. But we need to speak the same language with our developing team as user experience and user interface designers. And the language they speak is basically code, and we speak design. So there's a point where both merge, and it's CSS, there is this. For example, if we can see here border radius 0 pixels and 30 pixels. If I go to design, this is what it's showing me. If I go back to make it regular shape, if we go to inspect, we can see it changed, and it's basically 30 pixels of my shape. There are no funny things in here. It's pretty simple. But if I want to do it complicated, let's say like I did it before again, like this shape, for example, it's kind of weird, but let's say I want to build something like this again. I have here the code to share with my developers. Okay, so now let's go to prototyping. This is one of them, or probably the fun part. So I was telling you about these pop-up windows. What I did basically is that I have this frame, and from this frame I linked into these other smaller frames, and prototyping has these characteristics I'm going to show. Let's say I want to show a pop-up. So let's build another frame. Now, to this frame, I'm going to add another button. Oh, just one mistake. Let's say I want to add another button. And let's put some text to it because, of course, we need to tell users what is going on here. Okay, so let's change this to white. Let's make it smaller here, and here we say, let's make it a call to action, buy now. So what I'm building here in my flow is that when someone clicks in here, I want to show a message that is telling me something. Let's do something simple, not to complicate things. But let's just say I want to put a text box here and say your order is in the cart. Let's say is in your cart. Shopping cart is more. Shopping cart. And I will make this call to action to say something like go to cart. I'm not sure if it's with C or with K. Sorry, English is not my primary, so let's put it both of them. This, I can also change the shape of it. I like doing this one, these rounded corners. I think it looks pretty clean. So let's say I have this one. I'm going to rename it as pop-up. And now let's build this flow for here. Okay. So again, when the user clicks this button, it's going to show us this pop-up. How do I build this? We go to the tab we were talking before, prototype. And prototype works a little bit or a lot into logic. So when I perform an action, what is the result of that action? Basic Newton laws. So let's say in here, when I have on click, but there are other options, when I drag, when I hover, when I press, when a key in the pad is pressed in my keyboard, mouse enter is, for example, for forms, when I put down my email, let's say when the mouse scrolls, when the mouse goes out of the shape. But let's use a simpler one, said on click, what I want to happen. And we have navigate. This, for example, is what I used for going to this main page. This call to action leads me to this one because it's a navigation, it's the basic flow. But for the pop-up, we need to, for example, we have this scroll to is for call to actions that are anchored to something. Let's say, for example, this one is an anchor, if I remember good. Yes, an anchor means is a link not into another page, but in the same page. I have this landing page, I have this call to action, but this is not into another page, but into an anchor in the same page. This is what it means, scroll to. Then we have swap overlay and open overlay, which is how you build these pop-ups. Let's say I click in here and you can see my logic in here. What I build is on click, open an overlay, and in a pop-up. There are other ways that you can do a sign-in form or other things you have, and you have to specify which board is the one. And it shows you this transparency of where you are going to put it. Let's build in here. So again, on click is my action, and what I want it to do is that it will open an overlay to here, to my pop-up here. And then when I select this will end up the flow or take me to another screen. Okay, but then I have this, my pop-up, and then I will put my settings from the prototype I have already here. For example, the background. What this means that when this overlay happens, it's going to put a black shadow in this page, so this will have more contrast. Okay, let's play this. Okay, so I have here my landing page. This, as you see, already is reacting differently. It's telling me there's an action in here, and I have a pop-up in here. And apparently the color was not very well. The background color, I didn't set it very well. So let's go and fix this. So again, in Prototype, I have all my interactions in here. I can even add more interactions. For example, on drag, on click, and the ones we saw before. I don't want to overcomplicate things, so let's just stay with one. Here, I can show it on the center, on the top left, or on the bottom center, and there are other options too. Manual means I'm going to choose where it appears, and I can move it around. So here I can close when it's clicking outside. I'm going to show how this works, and then add the background behind the overlay. This is what I wanted before. Add the background, and it will show me that it's a black color at the 25%. And now we have this animation. We can have instant, we can have dissolve, and we have other types of animations. Because this is a pop-up, the other kind of animations doesn't really apply. But there are other options when you are doing other things, like, for example, sliders or gallery images that you want to make more interactive. So let's say I want this instantly. Okay, so now it's set. It should work the way I intended before. Let's play it again. And okay, I have again my page. And as you see, now the back is dark. And I can make a flow in here to keep. But remember, I said that if I click outside here, is the setting I have for my interaction. Here, close when clicking outside. This means the pop-up will close when I click outside of it. Now, let's say I'm not very convinced about this dark background. Let's say I want it to be at the 60%, just to say something. So it will refresh my page in here and will show me the new changes in this interaction that I built. So let's say by now, and now it's 60% dark. Okay, so we did a very interesting interaction in here. And now also something I like to add, for example, is an icon in here that closes this and goes back to this or to another page. For example, an error page or an empty state or something like this. So this, because this is a frame, you can have as many call to actions as you want. You can have the ones that goes to the flow. You can have one that goes back. You can have one that goes to another page, let's say. Okay, so far this is the prototyping in this tool in Figma. As you can see, there are plenty of things you can do. There are plenty of tools you can use with it, not only Figma per se, but you can things like the plugins for the pictures, the plugin for the maps, the plugins for the text, the plugins to generate code for developers. There are a bunch of things you can use. You can use icon libraries. You can use pictures libraries. You can use animations and interactions. For example, if you want to build a slider, there are also ways to do that. I'm not going deep into all the details of animations because there's no end to this. I can make, for example, that when I hover on this button, it will move a little bit to the top just to show these micro interactions. Micro interactions are small animations or small tasks that show to the user that something is happening. And this is very important for user experience. Let's say one is, this is classic, that you have the button and when you hover, this button will move or change color or do something. This will show the user that you are interacting with this specific piece in the whole system. Or in the gallery, for example, if I have these 3 pictures here, I can make that when you hover, these pictures became a little bit bigger than the regular size. So this will show the user that there's an interaction with these pieces. There are plenty of things you can do. I recommend that you do your own research. There are many tricks out there on YouTube or video courses or many things you can, articles, for example. The people at Reach is doing a lot of things also very interesting for you to learn more. So there's plenty of things to learn out there. We live in a time where we have unlimited knowledge and unlimited access to people that has a lot of experience out there from everywhere in the world. And sometimes we use it to, I don't know, fight about politics on Twitter. But we can use it for things that are way better than that, that will enrich our professional careers and minds even more. So I really recommend you to dig up into these things. I can keep going on and on all day on Figma, but I will stop here because I don't want to take more hours going into this. I know it's pretty interesting, but I want to go into the questions and answer part. I saw already here a few. How about masking images into a rectangle? Masking images is also possible. It's kind of very easy. You just need to, maybe I will show, but you just need to have your image and then your rectangle, and it's kind of like clip it together. And it's also very useful when you already have the image. Let's say if it's a special design a designer built for you and it's not something that is online, is of course better. But if you are just working with images that are maybe the final images are not ready, or maybe the I don't know, maybe there are a specific image that the client or the company you work for has already that is online, then this is easy to do. Okay, let's go into this clipping. I'm going to share again. So let's say, let's download this guy. So I download this picture into my desktop. I'm going to drag and drop. I'm going to resize this a little because it's way too big. But let's say I want it to be this, for example. I have these shapes in here that is the reviews. Let's say this photographer here gave us a review of our awesome jacket. So what I have to do is select my picture and select my shape. The shape, if I remember well, has to be on the front of it. To see the layers, you can go here to your sorry, to the side of your frames with all the information that you have. They have to be on the same, not the same layer, the same, let's say, next to each other. I cannot do the masking with this and a picture that is way down. It will overcomplicate things. I'll do it a little bit bigger. And in here, when you do right click, you have a bunch of options to move this from back and front. The auto layout create component that is, or use your plugins, lock it. And if you're familiar, for example, with Illustrator, has kind of or Photoshop has kind of similar things like this flipping. But this use as mask will help you. Wait, when the here. Okay, I'm not very expert at masking, as you see. Let's undo all this. To be honest, I kind of forgot how you mask pictures, but well, this is an option too. Okay, I don't want to take more time struggling with the masking. Obviously, it's not something I use in a day-to-day thing. But let's pass to the questions and answers. Any questions you would like to mention? I saw that you put in the chat a lot of places where you can take also more icons or pictures that are free. Is there an alternative for Figma? By alternative, you mean programs that do the same or tools that do the same? There are many. There's InVision, there's Adobe XD, there's Sketch, there's Framer. Those are the ones that I remember right now. Probably there are a few others out there that are not so popular, but Figma is kind of pretty standard. It's one of the most popular ones, if not the most, maybe. But yeah, there are other options. Some of them are you will need to pay, like Sketch. Some of them are free, like InVision. Some of them are like half and half, like free, but you need to pay for upgrades or for having more than one project, things like this. Okay, any other questions? Come on, guys, don't be shy. Okay, recommend Figma plugin for wireframes, and can you show how Anima works? Plugin specifically for wireframe, probably there's something out there that through this for wireframing, I use another tool that is specifically and exclusively for wireframing. So for Figma, I'm not really familiar if there's a plugin for it. But if you look into the options you have, the easiest way to discover is ask Google. For example, the one of the maps, I discovered it this way. And there are always these kind of blogs that have the best plugins, etc., etc. So about Anima, I'm going to show you a little bit of Anima. I like Anima very much. I'm very familiar with it. It's kind of silly to say, but I'm very proud of it because it's a great piece of technology that is made by a very small company here in Israel. First of all, for Anima, you have to create an account. So I don't even remember my user, but basically what it does is animations like this pop up. It's not that different from the animations that Figma already has, like the sliders, like the pop-ups, like interactions with the buttons. It's not that different. The only difference is that with Anima, you can convert that into code. So let's try into Anima. And also what is cool about Anima, Figma also does that you can share a link. For example, let's say this screen that I already have, I can have here share prototype and it will create, I can invite someone by email, or I can copy a URL and share it to my team, for example, or to a client. Anima has kind of the same thing, but also has something that is like the cloud. And you can share also with your team the whole files, like the whole project overall. True, I need to share my screen, sorry. Okay, so I was showing you, Anima. What I was saying is that in here in Figma, you have this shared prototype, and you can share this by email to a specific person. They can view or they can edit. If I show to a client, of course, it's just view. If I'm sharing to my team, it's edit. Or this copy link, and this will share a URL to this specific page, and it will let them interact. Anima has kind of the same thing, but with Anima, I have, as I told you, you have like the whole project. You can also share a link to the client when it has the interactions, but it will share also parts of the project, the ones you let them, to the rest of the team. Okay, so let's try to open Anima again. Okay, let's log in. I already logged in, I thought. Figma. Okay, here. For example, this window here, this is Anima. For example, I take this button and I want to put a hover effect. What I can do is, let's say, let's do it with these shapes, because this is an example I used before. So let's open again Anima. And let's say when the user goes through these pictures, I want to make this grow. Okay, there are many stuff that is pre-made already. Okay, and here I have export code. This will make I can view a preview of what I'm doing, the interaction I'm doing. But the interesting thing about Anima is this simple task will show the code for the developers, and I can share with them. And this will show how this should be built in the developing process. In this button, sync to project, what it does is that saves my interactions into my profile in Anima. And I don't know why it's working. Okay, pop up prototype, this one. Okay, so this screen is not Figma, this is Anima, and as you can see, this is a very simple interaction, but the Anima is kind of more like for micro interactions. Of course, there are things you can build like the sliders, but for that, I think Figma is easier and it's less complicated, because Anima can involve, for example, for the sliders, kind of to go into a timeline and build certain assets, let's say, of time, and with the, but for micro interactions like this button, like this hovering, Anima is simply great. Okay, so this was Anima. Any other questions? No. So if there are no more questions or anything else you want to share to know about prototyping in general, not necessarily about only Figma, feel free to contact me through my social media and can show how Smart Animate works in the prototype. I think getting into animation, into prototyping is like, we will need another session for this because there are so much things that you can do related to animation and to smart animation. But maybe next time. But I recommend, if you are interested into it, to look for more. There are plenty of tutorials about this. But maybe next time we can go more into this, because it's really an entire subject, the animation in Figma and the smart animations. Thank you very much to everyone. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you enjoyed, and most important of all, I hope you came with new ideas for your projects.
Hey everyone, I'm Amira. I'm standing in for Jordan right now. She had to leave early. But I just want to thank everybody for coming, and I want to thank Aldo for hosting this for Reach. We'll be sending the recordings out through Eventbrite, as well as to Aldo so he can distribute it as well. Also, yes, Ruben, the free one is a little limited. I think the only thing, one of the things that I know that it's limited to is that you can't have a custom domain. So like if you have a domain for your website, because you can kind of host it as like kind of like a pseudo website, but you would have to pay for like a custom domain.
Yeah.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thanks. Bye to everyone. Have a nice weekend.